All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to my SOL Grade 8 math videos. We have another technology enhanced question, which is asking us, and we always read these gray directions at the top, very important. It says to click on a box to choose each equation you want to select. You must select all correct equations, telling us there may be more than one correct answer again. So let's read what it's looking for. It's saying identify each equation that illustrates the commutative property and not just the commutative property, but the commutative property for multiplication. All right, so let's quickly review what the commutative property for multiplication says. What that says is if I have a value, any value, let's just call it A, and I multiply that value times any other value, let's just call it B, that is the exact same thing as if I were to have the B value being multiplied times the A value. So essentially what that's saying is when you're multiplying two values together, the order in which you multiply them does not matter. You get the same answer. And let's just put some numbers in here just to see if we're right. I'll pick a number 5 for A, and then I'll pick a -2 for B. Is that the same thing as a -2 being multiplied to a 5? Well, 5 times -2 is -10. -2 times 5 is -10. So yes, indeed, those two are equal, proving our commutative property for multiplication does hold water. So we need to find out which example here is the same as the example here. And some of these are kind of tricky how they're set up here, so you have to be careful. So as I look at this very first option, it says x times y plus 3 is the same as y times x plus 3. Now initially you might look at this and say, well, there's addition in this. I don't see any addition in the commutative property for multiplication. I would agree with you, but we also have to pay attention that there's multiplication in this. We have the x and the y connected together here via multiplication. And we have the y and the x connected together via multiplication. And what it's saying is this side is the same as this side because x times y is the same as y times x. The order in which they were multiplied does not matter. And that indeed is exactly what the commutative property says. So we're going to go ahead and choose the first choice as one of our answers. All right, so let's look at the next one. 6 times the quantity x plus 7 equals 6x plus 42. This one is not the commutative property. I'd be curious if you could tell me what property you see here. If you answered the distributive property, you were correct. We literally multiplied each term inside the parentheses by 6. 6 times x gave us 6x, and then 6 times 7 gave us 42. That is the distributive property. And we certainly are not looking for the distributive property, we're looking for the commutative property. All right, this next one indicates we have 3x being added to the quantity 5x plus 7x, and they're saying that's the same as the quantity 3x plus 5x being equal to, or being added to 7x. So essentially they're saying if you add these two things together and then add this one afterwards, that's the same thing as adding these two things together and then adding this one afterwards. Now that looks kind of like a commutative property, not for multiplication, but perhaps addition. But this is actually not the commutative property, it's going to be the associative property for addition. And again, we're not looking for the associative property, we're looking for the commutative property for multiplication. I don't even see much multiplication in there. So that one's not an answer. All right, let's look at this next one. 4 parentheses 3 equals 3 parentheses 4. Well, if you recall that when you see parentheses separating two numbers, that indicates multiplication. So essentially this is saying 4 times 3 equals 3 times 4. That's textbook commutative property. So it looks like we found another answer right here. And let's look at the last one, 12 being added to -3. That's the same as -3 being added to 12. That looks very close to being the commutative property for multiplication if we had multiplication between these two values, but we have addition. So this is actually not the commutative property for multiplication, this is the commutative property for addition, which does exist. It just says that two numbers added together, it does not matter the order in which you add them. But we're not looking for addition, we're looking for the commutative property just for multiplication. So the first and fourth choices are the only two that we're going to choose. All right, so again, to be able to solve this problem correctly, we need to make sure we're carefully reading the directions, recognizing there's possibly more than one correct answer. And we also, in this case, need to make sure we understand what the commutative property for multiplication is. We need to know all of our properties because you will guaranteedly see at least 2 or 3 questions on your SOL test that tie into properties. Okay, thanks for watching and have a great day, everybody.